everyone. Take a seat and we'll get started. Welcome and thank you for coming out on such a beautiful day to meet some candidates today. My name is Karen Boyd. I'm the chairman of the Minot Sleeper Library Trustees, and we're hosting you today. We're going to let Brittany Durgan is going to run the meeting. She's our moderator for the afternoon. So I'm going to turn things over to her right away. And you can see the 3 candidates for library trustee are already seated at the table. We're going to start with them.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. What a beautiful day it is outside. Thank you for being here inside with us today for this important event. And as always, thank you to the Minot Sleeper Library Board of Trustees for putting this on. It's so important to get the word out about candidates and to just be informed voters when we go to the polls. So, thank you, candidates, for being here. The way we will run things today is as usual. We will do by position. I'll call up the candidates. Thank you for already being up here. I'll ask a couple of questions, and then if anyone in the audience has a question, please raise your hand. We'll call on you. I do ask to please hold your commentary and opinions for after the event. I'll take questions only. You can direct a question to a particular candidate if you wish, but all candidates will have the opportunity to respond if they would like to. So, yes, and Karen is going to hold up a time card. So for each question, candidates will have 2 minutes to respond, and she'll have a countdown on the card so you know how much time you have left. So for library trustee, you'll vote for 3 individuals this year. Each will serve a 3-year term. We have Heidi Jeffrey, Margaret Peggy, Moriarty Nitz, and Scott Thompson. So candidates, and I will start with you, Heidi. If you can please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, why you feel that you'd be a good candidate, a good library trustee for this time.
Sure. So my name is Heidi Jeffrey. I was a vacationer here in Bristol for, over 30 years. But my husband and I had decided this was where we wanted to plant once we retired. So starting in 2017, we bought property, built a house, sent the kids to college, got them out of college, and then in October of 23, we moved here full time. One of the places that I first started going to once we moved here was the library. So I found that between the programs it was offering, the different activities, obviously it's book circulation, it was a place where I found friends, I found community, I found a place that I could learn, so I really became attached to the library and its services. I retired from Fidelity Investments in 2022, and upon retiring, I always knew that I wanted to do something that was either nonprofit or municipal board or nonprofit board, something like that. So I wanted to figure out how to use my skills in that nature. So I think what I bring is my 25-year experience from the corporate world, everything from strategic planning and goal setting, budget management, associate development and experience, communications, to what I feel is really an asset to the Bristol and the Newfoundland community. So if I were elected, what I would like to do is bring all those and really help continue to grow and strengthen the library here in the community.
Thank you, Heidi. Heidi?
Yep, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out today. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Margaret Moriarty Nitz. I go by Peggy, and I'm a resident of Bristol for the past 2.5 years full time. I'll tell you a little bit about myself personally, professionally, and then why I'm interested in the library position. I've been married to my husband Anthony for over 40 years. We raised 4 children. I now have 4 grandchildren. And I was a seasonal resident here for over 30 years. So our children have grown up here. And now that we're living here full time, this seems to be the central come back and we have our family gatherings, which is wonderful for me. Professionally, I'm a registered nurse. I had all my education in New Hampshire from St. Anselm College. For my bachelor's, the University of New Hampshire for my master's, and Riviera University for my graduate degree. I'm the full-time nurse administrator for Southern New Hampshire University's nursing programs. I work full-time remotely. I go down to Manchester once or twice a month for some particular activities. I'm interested in a library position because of my love of the town, and I wanted to have a chance to give back to the community, to kind of meet some people. The library has been an integral part of my life, from elementary school doing book reports and biographies to all of my formal education, and then now where I work, there's a online resource. So having both in-person and online resources, I think, are very important for our community members to access. A fun fact about me, I'll just tell you, I'm a daughter of an Irish immigrant, so I'm a first generation. I really feel like that connection is very important. My dad was a laborer, and from Boston, he would come up here, dabble in real estate and flip properties. And when we located our property on Holiday Hill, there was no flipping. We stayed, and that has been part of our life for a bit. I really hope that I could contribute to the community by just seeing people from different walks of life. I love the opportunities they have for children. I love learning, and I'm a patron of the library. I have one little book I'm going to go pick up this afternoon, Cutting for Stone, if they have it available. So thank you very much for listening. I appreciate your opportunity.
Thank you, Peggy. Scott?
Not to be redundant, but Monica and I, my wife Monica, have been coming to the Lakes region to Newfoundland since the early 90s. And we built a house in 2003. We had 3 grown children. And when they had left home and went to school, we asked each of them separately, we're going to sell either the house you grew up in or the house at Newfound Lake. What's it going to be? We said, you don't get to decide, but we'd like to know. They all wanted to keep the house up here because it's obviously, we like the lake access, but in addition, it's a wonderful community. And a bit about myself and my work history. I was born in New Hampshire, which I'm proud of. I grew up in Maine, but all my adult life I have lived in New Hampshire. I went to Acadia University in Nova Scotia, Manhattan School of Music, and then UNH, where I got degrees in music and education. Our 3 grown children, as I said, all live in state and professionally engaged. I have also been a lifetime user of libraries, both public libraries and academic libraries. I'm committed to the idea that the library is a wonderful community resource and an access point for unfettered access to a wide variety of information. I love that there is no filter that's telling me which shelf to go to, like, when you go onto the internet. It's just, you go to the library and there's so much there. I participate in activities in the library, I've done classes. I'm in the Scrabble group, we're always looking for new members. And that's it, so it's a great resource, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I have one other question for the 3 of you, and I'll start with you this time, Scott. You started to mention some of the resources and services. I'm curious to hear from each of you how you see the library serving the community now, and what opportunities do you see the library having in the future to serve our community's needs?
So as I mentioned, there's a lot of activities that go on in the library. People can go for just casual interests, Scrabble. But in addition, there's educational things. The library ultimately is an extension of our shared public school or other school experience. It's a place for learning. That's written right into our mission and the guiding statutes, that the importance of the library as a source of information and access. I think that we have grown technologically. I think that technology is going to be a continued presence in our life. And I think that, sort of adding a wing to the library, I think that we can increase our holdings through more use of the interlibrary loan service, which we use a lot, and also technology. So I see those are opportunities.
Thank you. Heidi?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think physically the library is a center, like an anchor that holds a community together. It's a beautiful physical building, and I think the additions that were done a number of years ago really enhanced the building space. I just talked to a neighbor just coincidentally yesterday. He just said, boy, I'd love to have some more space for like maybe work areas there, or just to be able to get out of the house and go someplace quiet to kind of have a place to focus. So that's just one thought I had just since last night, as a matter of fact. I think the library is a center for learning, but learning can be recreational, like through games you learn, but also through books and education you learn. One interesting professional activity I attended last year was on using the library space as a center for health information. As a nurse and a person very interested in health and wellness, I thought that was a particular area that could be explored, perhaps, with a lot of online virtual appointments. If people need space or they need the internet access, could that be something we think about? Just a thought. Also, I'm just interested in learning more about the resources and the administration of the library, and my background as an administrator, knowing about a budget, knowing about policies and procedures to kind of follow what's happening within those guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi?
Yeah. So I think libraries can serve a number of different purposes, and I think that the Me Not Sleeper fills a lot of the gaps. Obviously providing free access to materials, books, periodicals, etc. Promoting literacy at all ages, so through the book clubs, through the children's reading hours. Serving as a hub for people to come together, so the Scrabble Club, and the Cookbook Club, right? So there's different activities for different interests for people to come and congregate. It provides access for folks that maybe to computer or the internet that might not otherwise have it. It serves as a culture and a historical steward for the town. There's lots of historical information. Supports education. There's the after-school program where there's lots of kids now coming into the library. I love that it is open to everybody, so it really promotes this idea of equity and inclusivity by offering resources regardless of socioeconomic status, age, ethnicity, or ability. And I think when I look at it, having been recently retired, one of the things that I always struggled with when I worked full-time was that there were a lot of activities that were during the day. And so I couldn't participate them in the town where we had raised our kids. I don't see that a lot here either, and I think thinking about how we can expand some of the offerings at the library to serve some of the patrons that maybe are working until 4 or 5 o'clock at night, they couldn't make it till 6 or 7. Understand there's some challenges there, but I do think that's potentially a gap in the library's current offerings. I also do a certain amount of professional coaching, and I think the library can also be a great place where folks can come for career development and have folks with backgrounds in the private sector who can come in and be resources for people and help coach whether they're looking for jobs or working on their resumes or trying to come up with cover letters. And I think that would be another great offering that the library could offer to the community.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the audience?
So I do have one. You guys mentioned both technology and then some of the ways to look at different offerings. Any thoughts on trying to use technology and look at some of the offerings from an adult education perspective, right? A lot of the things that we have some things, but one of the things I think that this community could really benefit from is more of that. Any thoughts from you guys on how you look at it? I mean, there's a bunch of opportunities for us to graft onto, but just curious to see what you guys think.
May I? That's a great question. I would like to respond from a professional angle. At work, Southern New Hampshire University has a professional development continuing education program.
Yeah.
We just went to the campus last Wednesday, and we had a license to access a video. It's called Recovery City. So it was a documentary, but we not only had the documentary, it was for students and professors of psychology and whatnot. We also had the director and 2 participants in the video. And so that was one area of learning about disease, illness, health, and community resources that I think we could tag on to. So you could also have particular areas of interest. I like what you had said, Heidi, about professional development. If you picked a particular topic, perhaps you could even do like a Zoom meeting, have somebody in person and have somebody online to try to offer some insights into that.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean?
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the library in the next few years?
And actually, I apologize. I'm going to have you hold that question. Did either of you want to respond to the first one before we move on to the next question? You're welcome to, but you certainly don't have to.
So I think the only thing I would add is, and I don't know the answer, but I do think it would be interesting in seeing, are there resources available that we can bring into the library that then folks could access? I'm assuming yes, right? And so understanding what those resources are, how we get them, are you purchasing them, leasing them, whatever that is, right? And then understanding too whether or not 3 or 4 terminals is sufficient, right? Or would you need additional terminals if you're going to bring in additional resources like online learning?
Okay, awesome.
I would just add to that, it has occurred to me, I did the class in genealogy, 6 weeks. It was a wonderful class. However, I did think as I was there, it would have been handy if we could have been, for example, on Ancestry.com while we were in the class. So I see the opportunity for those informational kind of things that happen in the library to have expanded use of laptops, for example, that could be owned by the library. That would bring technology to life in the library setting. People can also bring in their own laptops and hook to the free Wi-Fi.
Awesome, thank you.
Sean, can you repeat your question?
What do you think is the biggest challenge facing the library in the coming 5 to 10 years?
So, not really sure yet. Haven't dug in enough, right? But I think the world is...
Or a community that uses the library.
What I think about is when I think about a library when I was a kid compared to the library today, right? It was really book blending is kind of what the library did. Then videos came in. And so as technology continues to advance and innovation continues to advance, there's almost I feel the library needs to be one of those cutting edge resources for a community, because a lot of times it's going to be the first place where a lot of people, let's use the internet as an example, right? The library might have been the first place you ever got on the internet. What is that next thing in the future, and what does it mean from an infrastructure perspective? What does it mean from a cost perspective? Again, a lot of unknowns. It's a little wishy-washy of a response, but I think it's where's the world going and how do we keep up with it?
Did either of you want to respond to that question before we move on?
I would just add, I think that for an institution like the Minot Sleeper Library, what's going to be really important in the future is balancing history and tradition with new things that are coming in. I say that because I stepped in to fill an empty position in August. And so I have a few months on the board, but I've quickly become aware of how connected the library is to this community and its history.
If I could just chime in to my colleagues who gave some great responses. I think we need to continually rebrand the library. I don't want it to become obsolete, like, oh, the library is an old-fashioned thing. If we could make it a center for lifelong learning, again, embrace the technology, making sure that we can meet the needs of the community. So I think trying to get that balance, as Scott had said about, the technology and in person, but maybe by rebranding the library, because I do love history as well. We don't want to lose that.
I'm gonna take one more question. Walter.
What are your individual activities within the library now?
You mean, what do we participate in? Well, let's see. I'll begin.
Sure.
So I mentioned Scrabble. I take books out all the time and return them. On time. I did I went to lectures on the Ukraine a few years ago, which I found really interesting and all that was going on there. I have, as I mentioned, I did the genealogy class. I signed up with Bruce, who he has a couple other things coming up to participate in some of those, or one of those. I also have been to the movie and soup night kind of thing, which is really fun. There are other things I haven't explored that I think would be interesting, but those are the things I currently do.
I'll continue on the same. I'm an avid reader, so I do frequent the library to check out and return the books. I do work full-time, so I think my access to daily activities, Monday through Friday, I don't have that opportunity. I've taken my children and my grandchildren to some of the kids' craft kind of things that we have, which I think are wonderful. And I think those are the main things. I did go to the Friends of the Library. They had an open house last spring because I was trying to see where I could potentially fit in. I didn't make that motion to join them quite yet, pending the outcome of this.
So again, big reader, so book lending is obviously a big part of my library experience. I participated in I think it was an 8-week tarot card program. I have attended a basket making class. There was an art class just last week. It was called alcohol painting, which is a totally different form of art that I had never experienced before. I use the online Libby service as well, so when I'm at home, I sometimes will get my books through Libby. And I'm a member of the monthly cookbook club.
Thank you very much. Oh, there's one more question, and go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the library in this town is commendable, to say the very least. All of the programs are beautiful, and it's a beautiful building. I'm very proud of it. One of the things that I think is the most important for the future going forward with technology isn't necessarily the change in the technology, it's the truth in technology. This is a huge issue, and I wondered if any of you have any experience at all in bringing a program, bringing a speaker, maybe possibly even getting someone on staff who's really knowledgeable, who could help us prove to ourselves when information is true or not true. That, I think, would be great going forward. I bet you'd need a place bigger than the Just a thought, just a thought. And it's sort of a question, but is there?
Yeah, I'll jump in a little. So I actually found out this as well. So I'll call it fake news, right? And so how do you, again, we need to do some research, but how do you help people decipher between fake news? It's really promoting almost like an information literacy, right? So both digitally as well as through the media. I think there's a component of critical thinking that has to take place, right? So not necessarily just, I read it, I believe it, right? So, well, who did you read it from? Who published it? Who was the author? What were their credentials? Like, how do you know that the information they're providing you is accurate? And, I think there must be a group, a resource out there that would allow us to think about what a program like that would look like, how to decipher Facebook crazy posts. I agree Because I think there's a lot of, I mean, I have this conversation with my husband, he'll say something and I'm like, I think that's fake news. I'm like, right, I don't think that's real. Let's dig into it and find out, so definitely agree.
As a principal of schools and as a consultant who has worked as an observer of high school classes, I know that information literacy is taught at high school level. And I sat in a class once where students were purposefully given something that sounded really great and valid and reliable to research and then discover where it actually came from. It was the most interesting thing. So I think there are professionals who could offer that kind of thing to the community, and I think it is a great resource because, as I said, the worry with any kind of technology is that the algorithm is driving what you are learning, as opposed to being the authentic driver of your own learning. So I think it's a great suggestion.
And I understand all of what you said, and I know that the kids do too, but they're not voting yet. We need that information as an adult collective.
Yes.
It's starting at the bottom, like little bits and pieces, little classes would be fabulous.
We never had information literacy in school. We learned how to read a book. Right? At least speaking for myself.
Peggy, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I'll just kind of round out the conversation. That's a great topic that you brought up. I think it's a huge topic in higher education. If we had the answer and results, we'd be millionaires and we sit on top of the world. So I think the only thing I could say to that is I think information is knowledge, and what we would have to do to just start off on the ground floor is to just have open conversations with it. And I know it's a tough one, but as a parent of 4 children, having those conversations, what did you hear, where did you get it, I think that's where it kind of has to start, and then maybe find some kind of proven way to go about it.
So do you think that it would be a good library program if we could find one?
If you don't mind, I'm going to ask that you discuss it with the candidates after. I'm going to move on to one other question, if you don't mind. And this time, really, one more question for the library trustees. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And this follows up on somewhat what you've been talking about. Before Sue and I happily left Florida to come here, I was in a program called Views on the News. And it was run in the library. And it was a weekly program. It was formal, and it provided an opportunity for the community to have a political dialogue. And people were not judging, that's fake news, this is real news, they were sharing views, basically. And I'm wondering, does the library currently have anything like that? And if not, would the library be interested in something like that?
So I'm not aware that the library has anything like that. I like the idea. I think you would need a moderator in order to help keep, especially in this environment that we're currently living in. I think it would be interesting. I don't know that we have one. Certainly, I think it would be worth a conversation with the trustees and the library staff. I think it would be well attended too.
I was going to just chime in too. I think the director of the library might really have a good pulse on who and how and what might need to happen, so I would defer to my trustee colleagues and the staff.
I'm not aware of any such program, but again, it would have to be, it's a suggestion that it be considered by the Board of Trustees as a whole and the library.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. This has been a great discussion. I just want to make sure that Shannon, I don't see her actually anymore, is not here. I will just make note that she is the one candidate running for trustee of the trust fund for a 3-year term. Chuck Cullen here? No. Charles Chuck Cullen is running to fill a 3-year term for cemetery trustee. And And for Town Budget Committee, Brian Gallagher is not here. He is running to fill a 2-year term. Paul, you are here though.
I am here.
And is Les here? No. So Paul, why don't you come on up? Oh, I'm sorry.
Now we'll save the best for last.
Yeah. So Paul and Les Dion, Paul Regan and Les Dion are running for 3-year terms for Town Budget Committee. You will be asked to vote for 2. So Paul, some of us know you, but why don't you start off with an introduction, your experience already with the Budget Committee, and why you think you're a good fit for this position.
So I moved to Bristol about 11 years ago. First couple of years was not really involved. Went to a budget committee meeting because I was interested in something they were talking about. And afterwards, the town administrator came up to me and said, "You really can't participate if you're not on the committee, and we have an open position. Would you be willing to accept?" So I was appointed to that 5 years ago, and I've been on the budget committee since then. And after I got involved with that, I've had other requests to help and have now got a couple of different hats I wear. But the budget committee is a big part. I'm actually, for this past cycle, I've been the chair of the committee. So what else were you asking? Oh, just general background, right?
And
So-
why you're a good fit for the position.
So I'm a retired engineer. I'm not an accountant, but I'm a person who loves numbers and spreadsheets, and so that's a lot of what I do and the things that I volunteer for. I'm the treasurer of my condominium association and things like that. I don't know, I'll stop here. If you have any questions, you can ask.
I do have a question about one of this year's warrant articles that will come up at town meeting.
Okay,
This year, the only warrant article that the current budget committee, which you serve on,
yes.
did not unanimously recommend is Article 17. And for those of you who have not read it yet, it's to see if the town will vote to establish an energy projects capital reserve fund for the purpose of funding energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, outreach initiatives related to increasing energy efficiency and/or reducing energy costs, and for covering grant matches related to increasing energy efficiency. The article asks to raise and appropriate $10,000 to be placed in the fund and to come from the unassigned fund balance. If established, the select board would be agents to expend. So I'm curious, Paul, if you can share with us whether you support this article from a financial standpoint, why or why not?
So just, if I could take just a step back, all the warrant articles get voted on by the select board on how they're recommending that the voters either approve it or not. The warrant articles that have to do with spending money, the budget committee also votes on our recommendation on whether we think they should be approved or not. So this one came up, and by a 4-2 vote, the budget committee does recommend that it be approved by the voters. But as Brittany pointed out, all the other things, I think we voted 6-0, so that was the one that was not. My concern with that simply is that I don't really have a lot of information. I was one of the 2 people who voted no, honestly. And it wasn't that I'm convinced that it's a horrible idea, but I'm not convinced that it's a great idea. So we got into a discussion about this, and the select board is a 7-member board made up of 6 elected representatives and 1 person appointed by the select board. So we asked our select board rep about, and she wasn't able to give us a lot of detail. And what she said was that at this point, the select board is okay with this because they'll be the agents to expend. So they'll control whether or not that money gets spent. And part of what I thought about was, well, my understanding is that the major value of this is that somebody's looking for a pot of money to use for like grant matches. For the next couple of years, I don't think we're going to get much opportunity for grants for green energy. It's certainly not from the federal government. And there's a lot of words in there that I found hard to understand. I did, even though I voted against it, I did make the comment that I'm going to town meeting, I'm hoping to learn some more things. I reserve the right to change my point of view, but that's what happened.
Great, thank you.
And all of that meeting, is, we record all those meetings, they're live streamed, you can go back and watch it if you really want to see what's happening.
Thank you, Paul. Are there questions from the audience? Yes, Sean.
I almost got out of here.
Wait, let me think about it. Paul, you've been chair previously.
I've been chair, yes.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, it was, you said it was a 6-0 vote for most votes, including recommending the budget.
Correct.
Right. Can you just give a quick 10,000 feet overview of what the budget process looks like? If people don't understand and who actually controls what the voters see?
All right, I'll have to stay up at 10 because I've only got 2 minutes. And
Yeah.
I could go on this for a long time.
I think maybe folks who haven't been here forever and don't understand the process.
So I mentioned that the current budget committee is a 7-member committee. When I first moved to town 11 years ago, I believe it was a 13-member committee. And it was, I think, one of the things that the budget committee, I think the thing that the budget committee does best right now is that we bring a range of viewpoints, and even when we don't agree, we are respectful and listen to each other. I have another budget committee member here, and I think he would agree with that. So, one of the things that I've tried to do over the past few years is that there's been some talk, there had been in the past, some people would stand up from it was almost like a battle between the budget committee and the select board when I first moved into what should the town be doing. I'm a firm believer that the budget committee doesn't set policy for the town. The town is led by the select board. So one of the things that I've done over the past couple of years, as I've said, to kick off the budget, the way it works is the select board puts together a draft budget, and that becomes the starting point for the budget committee. And then, just to answer your question before I go off on a tangent and use all my time, then what we do is we meet with all of the department heads and all of the people that are actually going to be responsible for spending the money. And we go through the budget line by line and make changes and make sure that it's all justified and ask for questions. Sometimes it's just that new information comes up, and then we're responsible for providing the budget that you'll vote for at town meeting. But one of the things that I've done is for the past couple of years, we've also said to the select board, I want you to give us a document saying what are the priorities for the upcoming year for the town. Because the budget, in my opinion, I'm sure I'm running out of time. I think the budget committee is not about what should we be doing. The budget committee's job is to find a budget that spends as little as money as possible to deliver all the services and the activities that we say that the select board says we are going to do. So I said this at the meeting last year. You could go in and argue with us and find places where, could you take a couple $100 out of this budget? I'm pretty sure you can. But there's no big things in there. There's no way to say you can cut $100,000 out of the budget without giving something up. Do you want the town clerk's office open as much as it is? Well, if we had less people in the office, we'd save money, but you wouldn't have the office open. Do you really want to pay for the police department to be available 24 hours a day? That costs a lot of money, but it provides a benefit to the town. If you want to make significant cuts, you have to think about what are we going to stop doing, what are we going to give up. Did I answer your question? Because I really rambled a little there. I tend to ramble. Okay.
Go ahead, Walter.
I don't have a question for Paul. I just want to say that serving on the budget committee has been an interesting period. And I've never worked with anybody that gave me more time to express myself, more opportunity to present the views that I get outside the budget committee to the budget committee. I believe the budget committee will be well read by Paul. I am happy to recommend both you and Leslie.
Thank you all.
Selectman Mulder. Sean, I think, or Paul, I'm sorry, your comments about the select board's priorities leads really well into talking to the select board candidates, unless there are any other questions. Yes, Monica?
Go
So we asked the library trustees what their biggest challenge they see in the future. As a budget committee, what's the largest challenge you think may be looming in the future?
So, I mean, the largest, I mean, I think, to me, it's obvious. It's that there's always opportunity to say, gee, we could do more. This would be easier to get this work done if we had another person working in this department. But that costs money. So one of the things I also struggle with is that setting the tax rate is actually somewhat complicated. It's not direct, because you authorize spending money, but then we also have revenues, and then we raise taxes to get the money that we need that the revenues don't cover. So I have said to somebody on the select board, I said, when we need to provide health insurance to all our full-time workers. So insurance is going crazy over the past few years. When that bill comes in and there's a big jump, we basically don't have an option to do anything other than to suck it up and pay. I've said to the chair of the select, might not be the current chair, I've said in the past that I think that the biggest opportunity is to be careful not to let the staff grow. That you have to be in some ways a little ruthless. That adding people costs a lot of money, and it's the thing we have a lot of control over. So that's the challenge, is to manage that. We want to provide the services, we want everyone to get what you need from the town, but we need to be focusing on the cost also. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, so for select board, we have Stephen Koppel, Sean Magoo, and John Miller. And each, so this year we will vote for 2 individuals, each to serve a 3-year term. Thank you for being here, and so we'll start off. I'll have each of you introduce yourselves and tell us why you feel like you would be a good fit for this position, and we'll start with you, Sean.
All right. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. For those people who don't know me, I'm Sean Magoo. I like to say that, no, I am not a native, but I am not local, but I am a native. I grew up in the Seacoast area of New Hampshire. My wife and I bought our house in Bristol in 1998. And funny enough, when we were looking for our house, I said to my wife that I'm really not interested in Bristol, and she said, why? And I said, it's just another old mill town. That same old mill town that we grew up in, and seemed a little depressing. Best mistake I ever made was buying
We'll see after the renovations.
Yeah, right. And we've decided that we're going to stay for another 20 years at least. So we're doing do some work on the house. So value will go up and taxes will go up. I'm a consulting forester. I started working in the area in 1995. I started volunteering my services with the town in, I think, 2000, 2001 as a conservation commission member. I've been on the budget for years. I was chair of the budget committee. Moved on to selectmen. If I am elected, this will be my 3rd run at selectmen. I tend to do my 3 years and get out and grab some sanity and try not to stay too long. I'm the president of a forestry consulting firm, so I think I have enough of the real world experience, but also on the money side and how it works that way. I'm very middle of the road. That tends to be me. So.
Thank you, John.
Hi, I'm John Miller. My wife Liz and I moved to town. We moved in full time, I think, in 2021. I lived in my shed as we were building our house out back during construction, so that was always interesting. I work for Cisco Systems today. I work from home quite a bit. I've been leading people for about 30 years. I'm very used to and had responsibility for multi-million-dollar budgets. It's some of those skills that I look at to try to leverage here, right? I have a particular view about leadership. I think leadership is about sort of really three things. One, having a strong opinion, but then at the same time being able to listen and learn from others and then be able to be influenced. But then the last one is really also about setting up structure. You know, there's no way that I think you can garner the support of the community and rally people around a particular position if you don't establish a good structure. The last several years, so today I'm the chair of the planning board and I'm also the chair of the technology committee. Planning board, we've been doing master plan updates, and it was through that whole process that really influenced me to really want to do this. Bristol, like many other communities, doesn't leverage that process really well at all. It's sort of a thing that's on the side, and I think it's something that we can do a much better job across the community. So I'm sure you guys will hear more about that, but that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Stephen?
I'm Steve Koppel. Been living in town 6 years last month. My wife and I bought the old Woodward house up next to the Aubuchon. Been working on it since then. My business has been in town for 10 years though. I own a dental laboratory. I make teeth. I've been running the business. I started the business, been running it for 40 years. I'm very comfortable making decisions. I'm very comfortable with budgets, marketing, customer service, that type of thing. I think there's a lot of similarities between the duties of a selectman and running a small business. There are differences, of course, but I think there's a lot of responsibility. I do my own research and form my own opinions. My wife and I have 4 grown children. She has 2, I have 2. They're all married. We have 8 grandchildren. She was born in Manchester, and she grew up in Manchester, and she has decided she's a country mouse. She just loves it up here in Bristol. I was born in Arlington, Mass. I was raised in Billerica, Mass. It was a nice small town at the time, and I just love Bristol. So we'd like to give back a little bit, and that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you. And Steve, we'll start with you for this next question. Paul just talked a little bit about selectmen priorities. I'm curious, thinking about the next 3 years, what should be some of the projects and priorities that you think the selectmen should take hold of?
I'd just like to see the town continue being run as well as it's been run. In the years that I've been here in town, the 10 years my business was here, and the 6 years that I've resided here, I think the town is run pretty well, and I just want to see to it that it continues to be run as well. I'm not too concerned about it because I'm sure these 2 are very qualified. So if I don't get in, I'm sure we'll be fine.
Thank you, John.
For me, this one's kind of interesting. If you look at the community surveys, the last community survey we did was in 2023, and the top thing that the community answered back when we were working on the master plan was they'd like to have the taxes reduced, right? Well, as Paul said, taxes are a simple function of either you're cutting services or you're working on your tax base. And it's such an amazing process trying to go through and update the master plan and think about, well, the community also doesn't want to lose its look, its feel. I mean, it's some of the things that we love about Bristol. Like, I don't want Bristol to become really significantly different than it is today. But there's going to be trade-offs and all of that, right? Which is why I'm like all about trying to figure out how we get the all committees pieces really going. I want to see the EDC get reconstituted and work directly actually with the planning board with some direction from the select board, where we can kind of start to figure out, are all of the pieces in place for the businesses they're trying to bring to town? Because everybody agreed we should bring them to town. I mean, Scott Sanjagrin sits in, he's on the select board now. The running joke is he works for Coca-Cola, so we keep saying, well, maybe we need to get a Pepsi plant in town, right? But, is it zoned? Where would we put it? Like, if that was something we would try to do. Like those pieces come to mind. The other pieces, we talked about the library and the technology pieces, right? I'm a firm believer in trying to figure out how we bring better training and adult education, right? If you look at who's hiring in town, Hub 66, we've been after them for years. But how are they hiring here? The challenge that they have is the skill sets that they need to hire for to run the broadband, to run the internet, to bring those things, don't exist a lot in central New Hampshire. So how do we address that? We address that by partnering with certain companies that have services, like in my case, Cisco. We have a thing where we go out in the world and there's a whole bunch of long distance education, right? So how do we bring that maybe to the library? So it's those kinds of pieces, but it all starts in planning, and it all starts with everybody having a say, and then you drive a consensus. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean?
Thank you. I see two things in the next 3 years that I want to focus on, or I see as maybe either a challenge or a priority. One is remaining stable in our services, in our people. That's our biggest issue. Our biggest liability right now is people, and I don't say that in a bad way. It's just, there's so much competition out there for good people, and it's hard. There's only so much you can pay folks on a local level. So, what can we do to make sure that we have the plows running when there's a snowstorm, that we have, the water and sewer keeps chugging along. We lose so much traction when you lose key people, and if you don't have a plan for that, we're often putting out fires and not planning for that. So that's a big priority for me, and we have a couple of those coming up in the next couple of years. And then we've heard it, people talking about they've moved to town, they have experience. What I love and what I want to work with too is bringing those people in, and what can you do for us? And I know bones about saying that to people. We have retired corporate lawyers, we have business professionals. What they want to be involved. Okay, great. What can you offer? What can you help us with? Here's something and run with it. It's always a balance between then what that becomes. But at the same time, it's such an untapped. It's much better the last 5-10 years, but it's such an untapped resource. And so I'd say that's one.
Great, thank you. Are there questions from the audience? Yes, Walter.
For 6 or 7 years, I finally and sought the support and tried to move on care for seniors and services to seniors. I miss Nana. I wish when the time was there, the need was there, I had done more for Nana. And maybe we wouldn't have lost it. We have now. And I think services are getting better. But 6 years ago, we contributed more to Nana than we have in recent past to different services available. Cost of living has made it more difficult, and the number of services available to seniors in Bristol have suffered. Is there any way, have you any suggestions I can hear on improving them?
Just speaking a little bit earnestly, you're right, Walter. I mean, when I was chair of budget way back before my first stint as selectman, I mean, we basically haven't changed what the town has contributed to nursing services, whether it's NANA or the 2 agencies that we now fund since then. It's been pretty much level funded since then. Whereas most other things have gone, as you know, have gone way up. And when we look at those outside agencies, that's always my first take, whether it was selectmen or budget, was, I never wanted to take tax dollars out of someone's pocket and give it to a third-party agency that they could support themselves, right? Except when it saved the town money, right? So things like the Bridge House or things like, services that actually, we fund a little bit here and it actually saves the taxpayers quite a lot of money rather than we would have to pay for it directly. And I think that's one area that hasn't seen the same kind of support, and you're right, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it as we go forward.
So for me, I would look at it and try to look at the Thompson Center and, maybe sit down and have some discussions with them around what services we have, where do we want to take them. Again, I think this somewhat comes back to, from my perspective, to some of the larger planning opportunities, right? Where do we have those gaps, and then how do we start to address them? The financial pieces will start to fall off. I do fundamentally agree with Sean around, I don't want to, if a third-party organization has an opportunity to fund themselves, I'm not looking to take taxpayer dollars to go do that. But at the same time, I'm definitely concerned over the constituency in Bristol to make sure that they're properly looked after when that's appropriate.
Steve, did you want to respond?
I would have to see the numbers, but I think taking care of the residents of Bristol is the number one priority of the governing councils. I don't know what we're spending in that area. I don't know how many people are enjoying the benefits. I certainly wouldn't think cutting it, the budget, would be smart. Finding the money. We gotta find the money. We're currently funding it $1 less than we did 7 years ago. $1 less now than we did 7 years ago. And things could be improved if we had a senior center. We're not going to get what I want, and I know that. But there's space available in the new town hall where Penny Baker could come and have a local office. And when they came before the budget committee, I asked him about that, how would you use it if we had it? And he said, if that space was available, it would get used, they would be here. Lakes Region has Nana now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you.
And if that space could be made available to Penny Baker, it's unused now.
You mean up above?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unused now, but you're gonna say different. It's unused now. If that were made available to Penny Baker, maybe some of the services that we used to have and no longer do have could be provided there.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with a question for the candidates? No? Okay, thank you for being here. The last candidates we'll speak with are those running for school district. We'll start with district moderator. Ned, you want to come up? So for district moderator, we'll be asked to vote for one individual, and the one candidate is Edward. We all know him as Ned Gordon. And Ned, you can take this microphone if you want. But I'm just curious. So many of us know you as your position for town moderator. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do as district moderator and how that might be a little bit different, and what that role entails?
The district moderator, you coordinate the election, school district election. That requires some coordination because it has been with 7 towns. It will be on an ongoing basis with 4 towns. And so you work with the moderators at each of the towns to make sure that you have proper counting, And the same way we conduct elections here in Bristol. So we want every other town to be open, fair, and accurate. And we do our very best to do that. And the second, probably the more difficult sometimes, job is to run the annual meeting of the school district. And the annual meeting, just like our town meeting is held at the high school, it involves all of the towns that are part of the district on an ongoing basis. It would be now the 4 larger towns that are in the district. And to do that, the purpose of being the moderator of the meeting, that meeting basically is the legislative body part of the government to provide checks and balances basically over your school board. And the moderator's job is to be sort of like the Speaker of the House, to be objective. It's not the school board's meeting, it's the people's meeting. And so I do my very best to make sure that it is the people's meeting. Everybody has the opportunity to be heard. If you come to the meeting, you're going to have the opportunity to be heard. We try to do it as fairly as we possibly can for everybody. And make sure everything is open and above board, so we make sure that the voting is clear for everybody. And I try to get as many names in the minutes as I possibly can. That's basically that.
Thank you, Ned. I appreciate that. Does anyone have a question for Ned?
I've been doing it I didn't run for school district moderator the first time I was written in. But since then, I've been on the ballot every year since then.
So how many flak jackets have you gone through?
31. This will be the 32nd election. And I thought that was a lot until I went to a moderator's retreat that the Secretary of State put on last week. And I thought 31 was a lot until I talked to Dan Eaton from down in the Keene area, who's been the moderator for 47 years. And I don't think I'm going to make that.
Okay, I think we do have one question, Rosemary.
Actually, it's not a question. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
Because I love this town, and I've been to a lot of the town meetings, and I understand your language around the legislative body. You've taught me a lot. You demonstrated fairness and kindness, and thank you.
Thank you. The one thing I have done, which is, first of all, I have to tell you, the very first year I did it, I got written in, and then we had a big question over whether we should have kindergarten. This was 1994, and the question was whether or not we should have kindergarten, and the vote came down 312 to 312. And I didn't vote, and somebody said, "You can break the tie." And it was the worst experience in my life, but I did not break the tie. So I didn't vote, and so I pissed off half the people. The other thing I tell you that I do I do it at town meeting, but I also do it there is we always used to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, which we still do, but then we always would get a minister to do the prayer. And unfortunately, I'd get a minister, and they would be parochial in the sense that because not everybody, I'm a Christian, but not everybody's a Christian, and then they'd always close the prayer with, "In Jesus' name we pray." And I say, well, is that really right for everybody at town meeting? Because not everybody may feel that way. So, long and short, so now I do an invocation at the beginning of town meeting, trying to get everybody focused on being kind and easy on each other.
Is Siobhan here? Okay. So just to make note, for school budget committee, one individual from Alexandria is running for a 3-year term. That is Siobhan Castle. Thank you. Moving on to school board. For school board, we'll be asked to vote for one individual from Alexandria to serve a 3-year term, and the one candidate running is Dennis Fitton. Thank you for being here.
No problem.
like with the others, Dennis, I will have you share a little bit about yourself and why you feel it would be a good fit for this position.
Fantastic. So my name's Dennis Fitton. I've been up in this area since about '04. I have a beautiful child that's currently a freshman in the high school. She's going to be finishing her career. This is a 3-year term. I've had a lot of involvement since we've been in this community, more so since the arrival of my daughter. I assisted the TTCC. I helped organize the fundraising benefit that was at Kathleen's Cottage that was able to put the scoreboards in Kelly Park. I, for the last 2 years, have worked with the middle school to organize the fundraising prize calendars so the kids could go away to Washington, D.C. I was in the military for 18 years, and I've worked for the state for 18 years within the Department of Corrections. I started off as an officer. I became a sergeant, and I left, worked for about 3 years, getting my degrees while I was working full-time for the National Guard. And then I went back to the DOC, and I drive a desk now. That's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. I live in Alexandria. My first house was between Dunkin' Donuts and Rite Aid when I first came here in '04. And there was a lot of traffic, but I grew up down in Massachusetts, so it was still rural to me. And I expanded, and I got a beautiful lot on a dead-end dirt road in Alexandria. Everything about this community, the children, having resources for our children, and watching them grow and ultimately become the future of our newfound school district and area is something that's I'm very passionate about.
Great, thank you. Recently, a survey was sent home to parents, guardians, educators, and community members from the 5th grade study committee to gather feedback to inform their consideration of sending 5th grade students to the middle school starting in the 2026-2027 school year. What are your thoughts on moving the 5th grade to the middle school?
So like anything, when I'll call it the quasi-divorce, where the other 3 towns left our school district, they've moved on, there's going to be a lot of questions coming up. Kindergarten, expansion, looking at potential renovations or changes in the schools that we currently have. More people are coming to our area. We're seeing houses pop up all over the place, multi-family units that are popping up, which bring more population. Shifting the children into the other school, I think, will ultimately be beneficial because we will be able to concentrate our resources into one space, and hopefully will give the children more opportunities, and not just for now, but for the years to come. I don't really envision with how modern the high school is, which is a beautiful facility. We're gonna have to look at, a 3, 6, 9, 12-year plan because a lot's gonna change. We're seeing it on a global scale. Goods and services are rising every day. With that, so are resources and costs of services. Having an investment in the children is going to be something that's going to benefit us for years to come and provide for our children and our children's children. The time that we take now and the places that we send our children is ultimately going to be what shapes our community for future years. So we will have to do what we have to do, and then we'll keep growing and looking towards the future.
Questions from the audience?
With declining enrollment and declining the birth rate, what do you see as the challenges for the future?
So, like anything, when I was younger, my folks had 3 kids, and my folks came from families where they were one of 7. So generationally, and I had 1 child. So I think the average people it costs so much for parents to raise a child today. The cost of daycare is astronomical. As we're seeing less birth rate and growth in that area, to me, that's all the reason why we should invest in the small population that is coming up as much as we can. Because before we had the ample opportunity of many people brings many opportunities, many diverse outlooks, and many hands making light work. Where we're not going to have that for the future, it's going to be a much more condensed population. I think that condensed population truly needs to be our finest. Because they're the ones that are going to be the future leaders of tomorrow, and they're the ones that are going to carry us into future generations. The more that we see birth rates decline in the United States, because it's not just a New Hampshire problem, this is a problem that's all over the world, we need to really invest in those populations as much as we can. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to carry us into the future years.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
What do you think of the voucher system that's being proposed from the state?
I think we've seen that before. I don't know. So we've seen a big change. A lot of places have gone from brick and mortar establishments to online. People work remotely, people are doing college remotely. So this is something that I think has been kicked around for many, many years. The voucher program could be beneficial to bring other students back into our district. However, having that option be available, we'd have to start looking, and I know the conversation's been kicked around many, many times about technology and resources and things of that nature. I stayed at home for a while when we entered into COVID. And I spent a lot of time being a stay-at-home teacher, dad, and working full-time. The challenge that came with that was enormous. With the voucher program, having people have choice, it's a double-edged sword because we're giving them opportunity to come back willingly, although if we move in the right direction, perhaps this newly established Pasquaney School District could eventually be absorbed back in. Who knows what could happen in the years to come. I would tend to think that we benefit more from expanding our school district than offering a voucher system, but I think it's a good pathway to have people come back and us prove something back to them. Bring some pride back into Newfound and make people want to come back to us.
John?
Yeah, so it's sort of a twofold question. The first part is really about, do you see a way where the school board can work with the select board and the local planning boards around how we plan for what goes on? And the reason I ask that question is we look at our housing costs. The median house in Bristol is $435,000 in October, right? Which means you got to make $100,000 to support that house.
Yep.
Right. So my biggest concern when I think about housing is how are we doing something where kids can stay home? Like if somebody wants to move to New York City or Boston, like this is not to chain them down, but more often than not, I think that they have okay, my only option is to leave. This is what it is, right? The second part to that is like when you look at aligning to business initiatives in town and trying to expose the kids to what those are, what training opportunities, what we need around here in central New Hampshire, how do you look at that? So that's what the two pieces there.
So if you please allow me to
Go for it.
grab the first part. So I grew up and I was a blue collar family.
Yeah.
I knew that I was never going to be a college kid. I was never going to be a doctor. I was 36 when I went to college. You know, my dad worked for the town. He ran the water treatment plant in the town that I grew up for. He worked there for 37 years. The Hewitt Center, the opportunities that our school engages with, promotes that type of upbringing. That working with your hands, working in business, in trades, those are the things that are really going to make our community thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Because not everybody's going to be the CEO. Not everybody's going to be a college graduate. Not everybody's going to thrive. At the end of the day, we need to encourage kids and show them that working with your hands or doing these jobs isn't menial. It's actually instrumental in not just their future, but in the future of our community. Try to get a good electrician at this point, right? I mean, your waiting list, you might as well just save yourself the chance. The second part of that is, I think that we as a community, and I brought up the Hewitt Center, the planning and the processing and working conjointly and having common goals. And you mentioned bringing businesses into this area, doing it selectively. My biggest fear is that Bristol becomes your quasi beach town.
Correct.
That's not what's going to be good for our citizenship in our community and our children, because those people come in, they utilize our resources, and then they leave. What the aftermath that they leave behind means very little to them. So where our school children and where our schools are going to go, working conjointly with the planning board, the select office, the budget committee, knowing that the decisions we make now that relate to the school will have long-term lasting effects for the community overall, and bringing business into our area. Let's face it, there's very few robust businesses that are in this area. If there was some that were selectively introduced, that would bolster our income through tax revenue. And then that would put us in a much better spot.
I mean, just one simple thing. In the state of New Hampshire, there have been 65 open sewage treatment plant jobs. Right? Like in my head, I'm always going, wait a minute, we have that problem across the state. We have a small system here. How do we partner and expose the kids in particular to those kinds of things, to understand, hey, these are the opportunities that nobody's really grabbing on change. It's a thing.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Well, I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you very much.
I want to thank the Library Board of Trustees one more time for putting on this event. I feel like we got a lot out of this today. In addition to meeting the candidates, there was some great discussion about what the future of the town could look like in partnership. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for